Hello there, and welcome to this week's Coaches Ramble with Elliott Richardson. Elliott is the Senior Manager of Human Performance for the Canadian Forces Morale and Welfare Services. He is formerly the Director of the Canadian Strength and Conditioning Association and was also a Manager of Sport Performance for Acadia University, where he was also the owner and coach of Acadia Performance Training. Elliott and I first met way back in 2007, where we were teammates for Acadia University football in 2007 and 2008, where Elliott eventually moved on to the CFL, where he played for the Edmonton Eskimos as well as the Saskatchewan Roughriders for 3 years until 2011. I really cherished my time with Elliott when I was a player. He taught me a lot. He took me under his wing and we did extra workouts and running and sprint training. And I truly appreciated that time. And he probably helped grease the wheels on eventually becoming a trainer and strength and conditioning coach myself. And also when he came back to Acadia to be the strength and conditioning coach, our times overlapped as I was there from 2012 to 2014 when I was coaching football there. So cool to be a part of Elliott's journey, and it was really great to catch up with him after all this time. Through this conversation, we discuss his current role with the Canadian military. We talk about long-term planning and metrics used at scale, creating buy-in at that level, his programming philosophy, and then kind of get into his journey through football, overcoming major injuries, and becoming a strength and conditioning coach. Also just from there, managing large number of athletes with little funding, little resources, limited equipment, limited space. Then we even kind of found time to discuss his own training. Like I said, it was cool to catch up with Elliott after all this time. It was amazing to see him continue to be successful over his career arc. I plan on having other guests on the podcast that are within his circle of influence. And he's definitely an inspiring example that people can probably work harder to be the best version of themselves in order to achieve great things. So I'm very grateful that Elliott was so generous with his time. One note I will make is this podcast was actually recorded on two separate evenings, actually 2 weeks apart from each other. In the first podcast, our first recording, we ran into some technical and connectivity issues. I've tried to edit those out as best I can. Just know that the second half of the podcast kind of picks up after some of those issues. So if there are, little choppy parts where it seems like there's sentences missing or something like that, you can blame me for those technical issues. As always, appreciate you all. And without further ado, here is my conversation with Elliott Richardson, the Senior Manager of Human Performance for the Canadian Forces Morale and Welfare Services.
And now Kevin Glenn looks at 2nd and 6. Flags fly over the middle. Dave Stella is leveled by Elliott Richardson. One of the hits of the year, and Stella remains down.
Brace yourself. Oh boy, what a hit. Elliott Richardson.
Yeah, man. Thanks for giving me your time. Appreciate it. How you been?
No worries. Good. Of course, curveballs in the evening. Everything's on track, and then daughter wipes out on the front lawn, slices her leg. So that puts a bit of delay on the bedtime events, and but that's just a microcosm of it all.
Everything's handled. She's okay.
Yeah, she's good. Got her patched up. No stitches required, we don't think. So
How old are your kids now?
Faye is 8, Florence is 6, and then Hugh's 2.
It's wild. I think the last time we spoke was a long time ago now. There's only the two of them, and they were both under like 3 years old. And you were explaining to me that, you could do 10 to 12 hours on the full floor at Acadia as a strength and conditioning coach. And then the 1 hour of pandemonium in the evening was way more stressful and cognitively demanding than the 12 hours on the floor.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I stand by that comment. I will double down on that comment. I would even extend that to 16 hours on the floor.
Still like that today, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah. Just I don't have to work 12 hours, but the PM shift of being a dad is probably more draining than the 8 or 9 hours. But I would also say that even, my current roles are more fatiguing and demanding than like being on the floor, even though my days are shorter. The cognitive load is far more challenging. I just feel more fatigued. It's not a physical fatigue; it's just a drained.
Yeah,
serotonin, dopamine just gone. Yeah,
interesting. Just because of more. What exactly? I don't know how much I can ask you about what you're doing for work right now, but what's the like an average day look like in your life these days?
Yeah, I mean, so I work for Canadian Armed. I don't work. I'm not a member. I'm a support. I serve those that serve, as we say, as it's the tagline for Canadian Forces Morale Welfare Services. And then we work in the performance or the Personnel Support Program division. And then we support. So I work for a branch of the military, and right now I'm the senior manager of their human performance program. So for the branch of the military that I work for, my new role is overseeing the strategic direction of our human performance program, which if you're thinking about sports, is like what they would have in like a high performance program. We just take a different approach to it. So looking at the direction, the alignment, and then the reporting on of how we're doing. But then also the disciplines of strength conditioning, mental performance, dietitians, and fitness, sport, and recreation, which is more the welfare side of things. So trying to get those disciplines across the different locations and different bases, wings, and units as aligned as possible. So that's a new role. Yeah, new role. But it's nothing's solved in the moment. Like you're just given, hey, you need to sort this out, and you need to find ways to get it done, and you need to figure out who do you need to talk to, where do you need to get money from, who can I interest, how long is it going to take for me to integrate this change into the organizational structure, how am I going to get people on board, staff, military people, all to try and then while at the same time trying to keep what I hope is like the direction of how I want the program to look and operate. So it's I'm very much removed from my first step away from the gym floor was like becoming more of a manager, and like you at least when you're a coach, like you're on the floor and you improve someone's squat, like man, like you get some instant dopamine hit, like man, I really improved that person's squat, like man, like I made a really good call on that set 3 that they should have gone up 5 pounds, and instead of that, it's really they hit a PR. This is great. Went from my first management level, went from like those wins don't exist anymore. So I started looking at wins in terms of like weeks to months. And now I'll be looking at in my new role, going to be more senior, looking at wins in terms of like months to years. Like I looked at my previous role, like we saw improvements, definite improvements and changes and like effects that we're having at the service member level, the organizational level, like in took 3 years of sort of work and data to come in to be like, okay, things have changed. Like people are getting better, or not degrading as much as they should. Number of engagements are increasing, but just with the nature of the work, like you don't get that instant feedback like you would in a 12-month off-season cycle with a varsity athlete. So it's more difficult to define success, and then a lot of the problems you have to try and solve come home with you, and you're constantly trying to think about how you're going to solve these challenges or get these people on board or do the changes or things that need to be done down the road, and just having patience because it's not going to happen fast.
There's a lot in there, like because you're more of a manager role, trying to act as a leader in the right places. You talked about budget and needing to find money to fund whatever it is you're trying to do and the changes that you're trying to make, and then obviously not like in as much of a hands-on position. So you mentioned some like, took 3 years to like get certain changes, or
Mhm.
what kind of changes are you looking to make, or what kind of like metrics are you looking at to gauge whether your strategies are working over the long term these days?
Yeah, I think like one thing you're constantly looking for when you're working with like in a military population is like when you're dealing with adults. So a lot of them are well trained or highly trained already, right? So like getting significant improvements is probably out the window. Like a lot of them are sort of near the end of like top of like where they could be, but like in terms of like our key metrics, like we're looking to keep people operationally capable for as long as possible. We call it performance longevity. Like how can they perform for longer,
Right.
for as many years as possible? And like when you look at that, you're looking at RSIs, so repetitive strain injuries, acute injuries, trying to minimize that. So trying to keep the strength of the force, if you will. So keeping people healthy. And so some of our key metrics are going to be around on the physical side, like force production, aerobic capacity, symmetry are kind of our three big ones, and then obviously we want to try and impact more people as well too. So just with the way like cycles work in terms of training and operations, like it sometimes takes 3 years to get 3 data points on someone, right? And to be able to see the cycles work through, like it's almost like it's probably closer to almost the Olympic, like you're almost looking at it in quads, right? Like you're going to try and see something change over 3 to 4 years. So that's on the physical side. And that's something that has like gone up into the right in terms of our engagement. Our force metrics have increased marginally. They don't need to increase a lot. Like I look at it, if someone's supposed to lose 3 to 5% per year above a certain age, and if we maintain, to me that's a 3 to 5% gain, right? Because we're retaining those strength outputs over a longer period of time when they should be declining if they're not training, and in addition to the overall load they're carrying through it, like just training and operations. And then we have some just internal, like subjective, more surveys, qualitative data that suggests that like those RSIs and acute injuries have been decreasing steadily over the last year. And then the Canadian Armed Forces also has like a bona fide occupational fitness requirement, so it's like a fitness test that's tied to their actual job. And we've been able to see like those improve a couple percent per year over that. So that's the closest thing you can probably tie to the job, is like their ability to perform their occupational requirements. And then there's a sub KPIs that are probably indicating that like that, and then those tie together too, as force production, symmetry, aerobic capacity. And then we've been able to, from like a nutrition perspective, increase the amount of calories people are getting, and quality calories, which from an energy availability is important, because that's like, if you look at like strength conditioning, like the key things that need to be that you can tie your hat to is strength conditioning. Nutrition, is essentially energy availability. Do you have enough calories to be able to do the job? Because being in a deficit over a long period of time and getting to low energy availability puts you at higher risk of breaking down. Your lack of ability to recover, as well as like metabolic and long-term like chronic health stuff as well too. So, and then on the mental performance side of things, like it's a little bit even more qualitative, but just in the amount of use that's getting and success rate with people passing courses is suggesting that that's having an influence, at least. I don't want to say a direct impact, but having those things. But I have to take all that data, and I have to then convey that in a way to senior leadership to let them know how sort of this collection of data implies that their program they're investing money in is having an effect.
So when you say mental performance and people passing courses and stuff, those are like, so you're correlating the improvements the improvements you're seeing in physical fitness with people being more successful with other courses that they have to take within the job. Is that kind of what you're saying?
No, that'd be a couple different like streams of like where we target our effects. Like on the physical side is more of like a long-term thing. Like it's more showing that like people are going to have higher performance longevity, whereas like our mental performance isn't built out in that way. So it's having more of an effect with like specific courses that people might be on.
Okay.
More of that, thinking like we call it like force generation. So like creating more people or allowing the crew qualifications So it'd be like in the sport world, it'd be like they might help people get more people in the door. And then on the physical side of things, it's about keeping as many people operationally as long as possible.
Okay, that makes sense. And then when you say you're getting more engagement, is that like number of people in the military like participating in the programs that you're offering? I know there's you mentioned the mandatory physical test. Is there, but then beyond that, there's not, like, what you're doing isn't necessarily mandatory for them?
No, nothing we do is mandatory. The only mandatory thing they have to do every year, and it's a CAF requirement, is do an annual fitness test. That, at least from a perspective of what touches my program and my staff. But other than that, everything else is completely voluntary. So you look at like buy-in and like, are we having an effect? Are we influencing people better? When you see the number of annual, like, it's not technically their PT test, but it's sort of like it's like a comprehensive test battery, no different than you would like a team sport. Their comprehensive test battery that, we encourage them to do, that we think is related to their job. The number of people engaged with that annual test has gone up, like in some cases, like doubled over the last 5 years. And then we can also just, through the different programs that we utilize, measure the number of programs we've given out, like physical training programs, as well as like number of workouts members have completed. And that has gone dramatically up as well too. So that shows that people are the members, almost their vote, like they're seeing value in it, and leadership is seeing enough in it to like schedule and organize our testing to be done with them. More people are showing up to do the tests, receive that information, and then doing something with it, and then seeing improvements and when they come back and do the tests again.
Yeah, that's fascinating, because like I know, and we haven't got into this, like your background is coming from like collegiate university strength and conditioning, where everything's mandatory, and if you don't do your workouts, you'll just get cut, or you'll be passed by, or some version of that. And then you get to this point where either in your job, like it's damn near like working with volunteers, and getting volunteers to do things and lead volunteers is way different than getting people to do stuff where it's mandatory. Or like on my end, it's like you have to, like, no one that is working with me has to work with me for the long term. And if they're not bought in, or I'm not getting success, or they're not achieving what they want, then they can leave at any time, kind of thing. So yeah, definitely a different problem when again, essentially working with volunteers. It's great to hear that you're having success on that front.
Yeah, it's and it's it's a little bit more like dealing with pro athletes, where it's completely on, they've already made it, and the biggest thing for them is, can they perform at their job? Whether they, now aside from passing their annual PT test, that's all that's required. Can they do their job? That's the only thing they worry about. They just want to be able to do their job. They want to do their job as much as they can, for as long as they can, and everything else is secondary. And if they feel that what you're offering them or having them do is taking away from their ability to do their job, or even just the time to do their job, then they're not going to show up. So they're not going to vote with their feet. But I think one thing that it's been a dramatic, I remember it in my interview for previous manager job, in terms of like how I was going to solve this problem. And it's really just implementing more of a performance science like approach, where every contact we made to them would lead to follow-up contact points. Before, I looked at it like the analogy I've used before is like, we just had a bunch of two-way doors in our previous service delivery model, where like someone would come in and they could like ask for a program, they'd take that program, they'd leave. Or they might come in to get some testing and they'd take that testing and leave. We wanted to make it that, like, if you were coming in for a program, okay, we'd first do a set of assessments to baseline you, so that we could give you a program that would be tailored to what that is. So then we could see that improvement, so that you could, you can then see that from a buy-in perspective, you actually made those improvements. Because when you're dealing with people that are already really well trained, they may not notice like a 7% increase on their IMTP, or like a 17% on their external rotator strength. But like when you show that hard data, then it's like it just reinforces that, hey, this thing worked. They're more likely to come back. And then from a culture perspective, like, they become artifacts that people value. So instead of, Taylor coming in to see me and be like, hey, I really want to get my bench up, or I really want to get better in this. Still, we all do. But or someone comes in like, hey, I have this recreational pursuit that I want to get better at. It's like our tests are at least connected in like the demands of their job, so we can be like, we don't have an upper body press metric. One, we know guys are probably gonna do that anyway. It's two, it's like we we want to tie it to things that are gonna be related to their job, so we can speak their language, so that when they come in, we're like, no, actually, your greatest deficit is in your distal hamstring strength, or your rotator cuff. And it's like, that's gonna be related to your job for this. We're gonna give you an easy program, and then we start pick away some low hanging fruits. They see some benefit of it, and they're more likely to come back and engage with us in future services, which is what we believe, or I believe we've been able to accomplish, is that like one contact is turned into like 4 or 5 contact points. So they come in, they get a test, they get some recommendations. They then come back to see those later down the road. They see improvements. It gets communicated out to the community from a culture perspective that these are the things we value, and then also puts the ownership and the professional expertise back in my coaches, in terms of like, they're the ones that are then now recommending what the client does, as opposed to client A come in and be like, hey, I want to get my bench up, and then put in, sort of forcing the coach to dictate to them what they should be doing, as opposed to the other way around. Now we want to meet people where we're at, and we want to include a little bit of what they want and put in what they need. But that's why I really think we've seen a lot of uptick, is just like showing them the information and showing them how they compare to themselves and the rest of the community in terms of normative data, as well as being able to show them risk factors, and then be able to give them like really simple tools for low-hanging fruit that they can get some short-term results pretty quick.
Oh, that low-hanging fruit is always, if you can find a low-hanging fruit in any client or athlete that you're working with, then it's usually going to pay off pretty well, both from a buy-in standpoint and just from like a performance standpoint. I'm way ahead of where I wanted to be here, but can I ask you, like, because since we're talking about like, you bring the client in, you have an assessment, not client,
member. It's called member.
Member. Yeah.
We also call them the client, like it's literally in our organizational shared competencies. Like client service is one of our shared competencies.
Yeah. What do your, I'm assuming you have different ones depending on the problem. What do your, and you mentioned some of the categories of metrics that you're looking at, but what is it like your assessment like coming in? And then from I love talking about programming, and you were always like meticulous and dialed in on like programs and things like that. Can I ask what like a program general template would look like for one of the people that you're working with?
Yeah, so we do try and get everyone tested and screened when they come in to the organization, just to be able to baseline them. 1, so that we can see their trajectory over time. 2, to be able to add to like our normative data set, and then 3, to create that initial like relationship piece early on. But yeah, we'll look at our core physical tests. We have, as not a plug, but we use pretty much all the valve products that you can get. So we look at hand grip, we look at isometric mid thigh pull, we look at Nordboard, we look at shoulder internal and external rotation, we look at the ASH test. We have an in-house isometric neck test that we've developed. We also counter movement jump, and then we, from an aerobic perspective, just because by the time that people start to work within the organization, they don't, running's not an efficient way to maybe measure things. So we use a 6-minute assault bike test with a 3-minute warm up. So that way we can get now it's an adjusted VO2 max, so it is a little bit inflated, but we can get someone's estimated VO2 max, plus we can get their heart rate recovery and their max heart rate. That way we can use their max heart rate as a tool for providing recommendations across any modality, whether they want to run, swim, bike. We can then use that heart rate as a variance. A lot of guys have heart rate measuring devices that they use. A lot of guys prefer bikes as like assault bikes, so then we can use their wattage as a training recommendation. So all our tests they're descriptive. They provide someone a description of where they are relative to the population, as well as like where some of their gaps might be, but then they're also prescriptive as well too, so that we can find the gaps and then give them recommendations of like what they should focus on, which leads us into, we've gone away from like completely individualizing everything, because that's not an efficient use of scale, but we've predominantly And we need to be quick in return because we need to be able to get someone's test. We need to probably return them a program within 48 hours because someone might come in, see you, expect to get some numbers, and they might be gone after that. Like you may not see them again for 6 months. So you need to, and that's, I go back to sort of our buy-in. Like I remember a paper I read early on about just collecting data in general. One of the worst things you can do is like take someone's data and give them nothing in return. So I'd say like from just a transactional perspective, just giving someone something, and we do it multiple times. We have posters up that show what the descriptive statistics are of our test. So we'd be like, hey, Taylor, you're above average on this test. You're below average. In between, I can tell you right away. I can be like, oh, you're a little bit better. They're 7% better than last time, though. But you should probably include this test. And then that's during the test, and that's not even before I give you your full readout. So I can give you value for your time right away. So you feel like you've gotten something out of the transaction. You're not just giving your time up, your 2 hours, whatever it takes for an intake. I can give you value back immediately. But once we get everything, like our coaches have done a phenomenal job coming up with pretty well templated things. Like we have to be very efficient with our training, so most of it is full body. I've talked to other countries that do a bit of a different split, but we've gone from like being 4 days a week strength training down to probably, if we get 2 to 3, we're probably pretty good, because we also want to make sure they're getting a couple of days of aerobic conditioning in. We try to do a 4 and 2 split, but 6 days a week is unreasonable probably for most people. We tried some upper and lower splits, but again, if someone misses something, they're probably not going to be there as well too. So the full bodies are kind of where, and also with trainees, they don't need a ton of stimulus. But the full body splits, just your conventional process of like, warming up, getting a little bit of power in. So it's a bit of a vertically integrated approach, trying to get a bit of power in through the warm-ups. That's something the community, I'd say CAP members in general, that don't really train power, and older people in general, once you get to your 20s, 30s, 40s, you're probably not training a lot of power, but you do need it sometimes. You just,
Also,
go ahead.
Just for like, not even maintaining, but like making, I guess it's maintaining, like just not losing that quality. It takes very, very little to like maintain it, but it will degrade over time, even with age and with training. So it's probably just best to more people kept that in there, kind of thing. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, and then so we have a decent block, and the training platform we use is quite modular in terms of being able to switch things in and out. And then after that, we just have blocks built out for our main areas that we see that generally people struggle in, which is going to be posterior chain, shoulders, and neck are going to be the kind of areas. And we just have blocks that are built in, so we can easily slide those into people's programs, and if they want the full meal solution. But I'd say that's probably 20% of the people that come through. If we have a team doing testing, 20% take sort of a full solution. We call it like the extra value meal if you're thinking McDonald's. Most people are just taking maybe from the value meal, or just like maybe just order some fries. And for them, that might just be like some recommendations of like, hey, here are 3 exercises you can do to add into your existing program. They're going to be beneficial. Sounds like most of them are pretty knowledgeable. And so it might just be like, hey, look, you don't really train this. Here's 2 exercises, 3 exercises to do. Put them in over the week. See you in 3 to 6 months. But in terms of like the programming aspect, it's pretty modular, where we'll upload their results on their profile. If they want a full program, put it in there, make some of the changes to what they need from their gaps, and then progress from there.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I like what you said about like when they come in and get their assessment, you're trying to get something in their hands within 48 hours. Because they don't want to leave people waiting, because they're like, that's kind of like a sales tactic, right? Like they're in there, like don't lose the sale now, and they're in and they're interested and they're already bought in. Better to get it to them. I was talking to another coach earlier today about how you'll get like a intake application or something like that, and someone wants to sign up for coaching, and then you try to schedule their call or whatever, and they're like, I'm ready, I'm available today. Like, it's like, no, like I don't have availability today, as much as I appreciate how excited you are. Usually booking into like the next week or something like that. But at the same time, as soon as you have like the introductory call with them, it's like, okay, get their program to them right now and get them started, because like they're excited about this. So that makes sense.
Get
to
them
me.
something. something. I mean, and that's been, I remember when I first started my previous role, I was pulled aside in the weight room by a veteran, let's say, and he was like, hey, like, you know, everything's good. He's like, my biggest thing is like sometimes it takes way too damn long to get a program back from the strength coaches. And I was like, right, and things fall through the cracks, but there wasn't a system in place, because like they might put a request like, hey, Taylor, I need a program. It's like, what does this guy need, right? It's like it's hard to sort of communicate by email, and there's no sort of process. But now in terms of like, we actually do have a process where, like, especially on a team level, people come in, they do a thing, we set up with their leadership a feedback mechanism 48 hours later, and then because of like the posters and stuff we have around the facility, that when we set them up specifically when they're doing the test, we can start educating them along the way. So at the very least, like, even if they miss that thing 2 days later, they feel value for their time, and we've already given them something, right? So it's like maybe analogous to like a different world would be like from a private sector perspective, might be like someone reaches out for something like, hey, yeah, we got our call in 3 days, but here's something you can start on right away, right? It's like, here you go. They see value. Oh, awesome. Like, I already got something in my hands. I can start working on it. And they're starting to see value. And I think that's been one of the major changes. It's been extremely beneficial for our guys.
So you mentioned that this wasn't a plug, but I figured I'd bring it up because you mentioned all the Vald products that you guys are using.
Mm-hmm.
Now, are you affiliated with Vald?
No, I have no affiliation with Vald.
Okay, it's not a plug.
Not a plug.
But you're using, it looks like all of these.
We just don't use Human Track or Smart Speed. Sorry, we don't use Smart Speed or Human Track.
Okay.
Mostly because speed's not a major KPI for the population, and Human Track has some challenges from a security perspective with cameras and all that in terms of recording people's images and bodies and such as a national security issue. But and how we got to that is, again, it's not, we used to, when I first started, we probably had like 4 companies we were using for different solutions. And then for me, it just didn't make sense.
Yeah.
Okay, why am I going to maintain 4 contracts, 4 relationships when there's one company that would sort of do it all for us? And that was probably the main decision.
So you're using
for making the change.
You're using their like hub and their app and everything too. And is that how you're delivering programs out? Does that work through there? Or?
No, we have the hub, but that we have our own AMS that then takes all the information from their hub and then aggregates with other data. We might put stuff in manually with certain tests, as we do. I talked about some of our battery. Also, we do Y balance, a Y balance test, which we enter manually. There's a couple other things as well too, but just be able to put it on the whole complete profile. Nutrition, we do some other ones. Body composition that we have to import. It goes onto our reports that we provide people, and then we have a training app that we use separately to build out our programs and push to the members.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so then with the program, you mentioned like general warm up stuff, and then some power work, and kind of got off track. And then what do your programs look like after that?
They're going to be. I'm going to start with it's mostly compound movements. Generally lower. It's usually a pairing lower and upper body together. Potentially a core in there, but probably not to the second series. There's honestly not a lot. There's probably 6 to 7 exercises that come in. There is a bit more of an emphasis on our tempos on like an eccentric perspective than I was used to back in the collegiate setting, just as a way to recruit muscle fibers with like an older population. You're just reducing some of that risk with that aspect. So it's like potentially like any from 2 to 4 seconds on the eccentric, and just more variety, whether it's using things like belt squats versus back squats, or trap bar versus deadlift. Not a lot of Olympic lifts, just because I'd say like our role is more as a consultant than an actual like coach in the collegiate setting. Like, we're more just providing recommendations. Like, the actual time spent, even from the coaches delivering the programs, is probably minimal once they're actually involved. So it's just trying to create something that's easy for the member to be able to do. Again, we're just changing. We're at the end, we're chasing outputs. We're not chasing like the exercise and modality. It doesn't matter as much as long as they're producing force, or as long as they're getting muscle recruitment. So that'd be the basics, and then we have some accessories built there that are generally focused around shoulders, hamstring health, knees, taking the load off the trunk, because we're also trying to deload from all the stresses of wearing heavy gear, being on their feet, all that stuff. So that's us being taxed actually doing the job, right? So it's one of those things, like if to a certain point, like if someone work, right, because you're getting that in practice, you might have like very small doses of it, but you have to dramatically reduce your volume to accommodate for the stuff they're doing on the day-to-day basis.
That makes sense. And that kind of comes back to one of my questions that I had based on what you mentioned earlier, that there's a lot of repetitive strain injuries that go along with the job. What are some repetitive strain injuries that you see or are more common, and like what do you work into your program to combat those?
Yeah, so I'd say repetitive strain, like definitely low back, shoulders, neck would probably be some of the big ones. So a lot of it is calisthenics, push-ups, load carries. You put them into more of a forward posture, so it's like undoing that a little bit. Not programming. There's not a ton of pressing that's in the programs. There's some, but there's not a lot of heavy emphasis on it. We have a 4-phase neck approach, just from like all the way from owning like deep neck flexor strength to slowly starting like an incline position, then slowly reclining someone to baseline, to eventually loading it with a Kaiser cable system and iron neck to be able to build like that pure like maximum force isometric strength in like a good position. And then from an acute perspective, like there are some like knee injuries, lower limb injuries. So a lot of just different variations of like working the hamstring from a lot of different angles, whether that's good mornings, RDLs, hamstring curls, reverse hyper, to glute ham raise, to we like an assisted machine as well too, an Atlantis machine that does you can deload, you work the full range of motion.
It's like a assisted Nordic or whatever.
Assisted Nordic, yeah. So just honestly a ton of that.
I wish more gyms had assisted Nordics, because people suck at doing GHR properly, and it's like hamstring curls just aren't the same, and trying to get person to do, from one, like some people can't do 1 or 2 glute ham raises properly, and getting them to like, anywhere 5 to 10 reps is just like a struggle. And whether if you can set it up with a band or something like that, even that is just like not the same. Yeah, I wish more gyms had that like assisted Nordic type setup. It's funny that like you kind of like walk through the general setup of the program, and I don't, our programming like setup or like general template and like the things you're working around and common injuries and accessories, like they're probably not that different, which is fascinating. It's like shoulders and hips take a beating, different sports and different requirements of jobs. And I have clients that have tons of different jobs, like got to maintain shoulder and hip health, and make sure people are training their abs and doing that. And yeah, I'm curious, what is I like the heavy focus on the neck. Where does that come from? What and why are you guys doing that so much?
That actually come from like occupational requirements in terms of like, working in different environments, whether that's like in the air, whether that's on sea, like you're going to get bounced around a little bit more. Concussion, different type of concussion risks. Like in addition, like one thing you don't in sport, it's all direct impact usually in terms of that too. And then just being in different environments and then combatives, like there's a hand-to-hand combat, like they're in the military in general, like there's mixed martial arts, so they get like a mixed martial artist as well too, boxer, like metric neck strength as well too, just from like even an endurance perspective, being able to wear a helmet, wear gear on top of the helmet for long periods of time.
Yeah, it's a good point. They have to wear a helmet all the time. I kind of wondered if it was related to like pilots or being in the air or being in on the water. That makes sense. Um, Fair enough about there being mixed martial arts in there too. Um, that's super fascinating, and it sounds like you're. I mean, obviously, you have a lot of. You're not directly on the floor or like working with one
Mhm.
person, as you mentioned, but still get to be like pretty creative with the program. See, like you mentioned, it takes longer to see some of those results as people are trained, but also have tons of other requirements in their life. But yeah, I just love picking people's brains about programming because it's the most fun part of the job, I think. Still, well.
Well, here we are again.
Welcome back, sir.
Thank you, sir. How are you?
Pretty great, man. Appreciate you joining me again.
No worries. Good to be here. I completed all updates and completed a Wi-Fi internet reset as well too. Hard reset.
Amazing. Should
Yeah,
be flying, ready to go.
yeah, exactly,
How have
exactly.
you been?
Good man. Bit tired today. Decided to do yesterday. Decided to have a pair my mid late afternoon workout with a mid late afternoon pre-workout coffee. Um,
Okay.
and yeah, still humming at 11:30 at night. So
Yeah.
um,
What's I remember, I guess it was a while ago now when we were both at Acadia. You had a pretty solid coffee intake habit. What's your caffeine intake like these days?
well, as we know, Taylor, the optimal caffeine intake for long-term health benefits is 3 to 5 cups per day. So I'm safely and sometimes exceeding that limit. But
Yeah.
yeah, you're generally looking at like a something first up, um, and then a cup, and then maybe a cup in the car, and then we have pretty good coffee set up at work, so I might make myself a morning coffee. Then I might have a late morning, and then potentially a early afternoon, depending on the day. Um, and that kind of wraps up my caffeine schedule.
Yeah. That's amazing, man. I forced myself to cut back recently, but I was up to and including, and I think my caffeine coffee intake habit also started when I was coaching
Yeah,
at Acadia. But I was up to like a pot a day in the morning,
yeah,
and then on then on training days, like pre-workout in the afternoon, which was probably like 300 milligrams of caffeine and whatever else
yeah,
kind of goes in those, and had falling asleep like no issues at all. Just like was taking way too much, and can't say much for sleep quality, but yeah, and my wife just basically bugged me enough to the point like you cannot be consuming like 1,000 grams of caffeine every day. I'm like, yeah, it's probably not sustainable over the long term. So these
no,
days it's like
no,
one coffee and like a Diet Coke in the afternoon, and like
yeah,
still use pre-workouts, but kind of just try to stay more relaxed on those. So
yeah. No, for me,
um
it all depends if like how my sleep, what level of sleep deprivation I'm at. Like if I'm at a higher level of sleep deprivation, like I can tolerate a 3 or 4 p.m. Coffee, but if I'm actually getting the sleep that I probably need, like I got to shut it down by like one at the latest. I do think like
yeah,
from a genetics perspective, I do think I'm like a fast caffeine metabolizer.
yeah,
But nonetheless, it's like if that's a sign of like I'm getting good rest, then like that 3 o'clock one's probably not a great idea.
no, but it just tastes so good and
It,
it's
it
so
does.
hard.
It does.
um so then what does training look like for you these days, your own workouts?
Geez, are we talking the ideal or the actual?
Both. Because
Um,
you mentioned your afternoon workout, so I might as well ask
yeah,
now.
yeah. So I mean, I've tried like the ideal before. Like I really like if I can get in like 4 days a week, upper lower splits. I like to put in an ideal world of on my uppers. I do like to implement more of like the power, like some power rate of force development work on that day, just because like it's a little bit of a nervous system stimulus. It's not so much that crushes me, but like get some power and speed in there. And then on Then on my lowers, like it's obviously a bit more CNS intensive. And repeating that with just some different movement patterns, which we can go into detail with. I think like when it's probably like at its peak, yeah, it was like, and it's probably only like 4 to 6 exercises per day. Like I might have like 3 series, 2, maybe 3 series, like if you're counting power as a series. But I'm, bench, incline, dumbbell, probably have like, a vertical press and in between and a horizontal and maybe something else over the course of a week. And then I've just rotated between like trap bar, front squat, back squat, rear foot elevated, trying to cycle those in and out depending on the cycle, single leg RDLs, hamstring. I've implemented a bit more machines in just because we have it at work. But the idea would be the upper lower split. But we're probably, and then 2 days a week of like conditioning or cardio, and I might sneak some in on that. Where that's evolved to is like I'm probably more like 3 days a week lifting, and it's probably now more of an upper lower plus a full body. And then like 2 to 3 days a week of conditioning, aerobic work. But I have been trying to sneak in a little bit more aerobic work throughout, like even like it's 5 to 6, it's something I haven't done in the past, but 5 to 6 minutes on the bike just to get my heart rate up into a bit of a mobility dynamic warm up, and then into a lift, and then finishing off sometimes with just 10 minutes, like 10 minutes of just some easier cardio. And if that, the way I think about it is like over the course of a week, that's getting me like potentially like 45, 60 minutes of like sort of like zone 2, zone 3 work. And then I have a day where it's a bit more aerobic focused. And then I have like more of a day where I might push VO2 on some like harder intervals, traditionally just like 4 minutes on, 3 to 4 minutes off, repeating that. There was a phase where I was running a lot more. But a little bit of a knee niggle that I'm working on getting potentially dealt with. So but that's gotten me into more just using different machines, whether it's rowers, ski ergs, some softer treadmills, different types of bikes, in that, just try and get, as it is like the culture I work in, like it's more aerobic conditioning focused. So just to be from a culture perspective, it's relevant. And there, in my previous role, like there were some running requirements to be able to do to help out with some of the stuff that we do with the guys. Cool. But I was down to like at the best, I was like was able to, my best was a 20-minute 5K, and then like a 44-minute 10K was.
Damn. Okay.
That was a, it was a couple of years ago. Then I sort of like gone back to like balancing out like bit more lifting with conditioning as well too.
Okay. So you had actual fitness requirements for your previous position, but you don't have them necessarily now, but you just want to maintain.
I don't really have them. Like technically with the organization, we all have to do all the fitness delivery staff have to do the same annual fitness test the CAF members do. But we just have to get a bronze level. But then where I work, like that's, we all strive for gold or platinum.
Of course.
And then just with some of the testing and the courses and stuff that we're involved with, like we actually have to run some of them. So I never had to do it myself, but I had to be fit enough to back up in case one of the staff couldn't do it at that time. So that's where it is definitely more running based. But that's where I was really pushing the kilometers at that point. Now I'm just in a healthy mix, and like maybe one of the metrics I'm trying to like see improve is just my overnight resting heart rate. I'm like, how low can I get this thing?
Which is going to be valuable for long-term health. 44-minute 10K, those little legs must have just been humming along.
Oh yeah, they were moving, buddy. It was one of those days where it was like, and I took a bit of a break in between. It was one of those days where I'm like, I'm just gonna go out for a run. And left the compound and just like started going. I was like, had a pretty good clip. Okay, it's like I'm moving at like a 4:30, 4:40 pace. I'm like, I keep going. And then by the time I did this loop, it was like it's closing in on 10, but like the loop isn't quite a 10K loop. So I like had to just keep going down the one highway until I finally got to 10K, just so I could say that I did it. So I probably could have been sub 44 if I didn't sort of stop in between, just take a little bit of a rest. But
Right.
yeah, it was humming.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. You mentioned the knee injury. That's kind of the one of the concerns like that I always have. Like I keep going back and forth in my head, like, oh, I want to like start running or do more cardio. Mostly just like walking the dogs in the morning and things like that. Which we got some like hills and stuff around. Probably gets me in zone two. And but like as soon as I start any kind of like jogging, it's just like back and knees, kind of like the pounding impacts
Yeah,
lifting. So I've wanted to get one of those like assault bikes, the ones with the handles. I've been bugging
yeah,
Sam about getting one of those because that's the other thing too, is like with cycling as a powerlifter, like I'm probably just so inefficient at cycling that my legs will get tired before it's
oh yeah,
like stressing my heart appropriately. So yeah, but
yeah.
yeah, getting older, man, we got to start thinking about these things more and more.
Yeah, yeah. Even when my doctor bugged me at one time, he's like, "Yeah, you're looking like you're in pretty good shape, but like, make sure you're getting some cardio." I'm like, "Hey, I'm still running. Like, I don't want to I don't want to have my arteries turn into rock solid pipes like
No,
some of the people of the past have." Now there's
yeah,
confounding factors on some of them, but like, yeah, just like that is you know that is a I guess an adaptation of that you a little bit less elasticity around like blood vessels and arteries as you just focus on strength stuff, whereas
yeah,
some of the aerobic stuff will just promote some of that elasticity and reduce the long-term risk of some of the cardiovascular stuff,
yeah,
which is that aspect. So it's like, yeah, look at it as like strength is your function, like it allows you to do more stuff, and then the aerobic piece, which doesn't need to be too much, is is like your longevity piece. And on top of that, it's just tying into like we have a pretty decent yard here, and I probably
yeah.
could have a ride-on mower, but I choose to push, and it takes about probably an hour and a half. So that probably gets me another like hour and a half of zone two. 'Cause I either cook it or I do have a 40-pound vest that I'll strap on if I need to get a little
Come
bit more.
on.
And then in the winter, like we were pretty decent size driveway as well too. So like shoveling can take another 30, 45 minutes. But that's
Yeah,
another. So that's sort of like my extra stuff as well.
yeah.
Just from a
Need
health and
that.
longevity. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's free
shoveling's
cardio.
good like morning cardio or morning fitness.
Yeah,
That's a nice flex there. Like, oh, it takes me an hour and a half to cut my grass. I got this big ass yard.
yeah,
Doing it with the weighted vest. There was a point where I was doing weighted vest walking for this is probably like late 2020, early 2021. Probably did like 6 or 7 months weighted vest with like 50-pound vest. It was like an hour walk every single morning with my dog. And naturally I get to this point, well, this is too light. So I bought a heavier vest
yeah,
and then couple months go by, I just keep doing these, and then all of a sudden I'm working at my desk one day and my neck is just killing me. And like the next day, neck is just like, what is
yeah,
wrong with me? Like my neck and my shoulders are just wrecked. And I realized it's just because like, okay, you know, was squatting and deadlifting like mid sixes at the time, still like benching
yeah,
multiple days per week and just walking with this massive vest every single day. Like, yeah, maybe just chill on the weighted vest a little bit,
yeah.
but it's not an everyday thing. So,
Yeah, I've backed off
um,
on mine a little bit too, just with same thing. Like come in and like the next or like that night or the next day, like SI is kind of like sore and I'm walking around like, but it's for the health. But I'm
yeah.
healthier, I swear. Meanwhile, I'm walking
Yeah,
around like a cripple.
no. Yeah, I think at the time I was just like mentally ill, probably, but
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, it kind of is what it is. Um, anyway, so we touched on this a little bit last time, but it's kind of when we
Mhm.
started running into connectivity issues. Wonder if you could take us all back and tell us kind of what got Elliott Richardson into lifting weights, and along that path, kind of what influenced you to pursue being a strength and conditioning coach.
Yeah, so it was definitely high school, and it was high school football. And it was like obviously enough self-awareness back then to understand I was undersized and overlooked early. And this is grade 9, like just started getting into it because there are already guys like Tom Flaxman who like in grade 10 was like, shaving and like 6'1", 240, and just running over little grade 9s coming in. And then there are other kids that have played football for a while, and I was, somewhat overlooked. And, fortunately, a grade 13 kid who's volunteer coaching, like, set up like a weight room thing for us. I got my first exposure there, and then just kind of probably more dabbled in it. It was probably like grade 10 where I really started to get into training and seeing that as like a tool that I could just balance the scales, so to speak, like always undersized, enough self-awareness to do that. And then I think just developed, some sort of a chip on my shoulder, or maybe call it insecurity, who knows, but yeah, that's probably what stuck is just need to prove people wrong. As I develop self-awareness, I feel that's probably what it is. It's like this thing of constantly need to prove people.
Yeah. That's what it is for me.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, and I just saw positive returns, and like whether it's associative, correlative, causal, I'm not sure, but improvements in the weight room, improvements of physical performance started to translate onto football and to other things. And it was just also something I think from looking back at it as well, and like how it translated and transferred like in football is like I've always dug or like sought pleasure, like reward, satisfaction of feeling like of doing something other people weren't. So like I did like training like during lunch hour or after school, or like finishing work and like running at like 11 o'clock at night, because like for whatever reason it was like I just felt like I was gaining an edge, and it was like I almost didn't like training with other people sometimes, because like I just knew I was separating myself from other people. So it was whether that goes hand in hand with the chip on the shoulder is that got me into it, and that get that next level of transfer or graduation into like whether it was speed training, whether like through SST or Larry Justanis's programs of like, okay, now I need to get faster, and that started to see rewards and gains. And then as I transitioned from like playing hockey like very poorly and on unsuccessful teams to like transitioning to football, where I sort of had like immediate success, recognition on good teams, and along with this like strength conditioning focus as well too, and gave me something that like I was just good at for once. Like where like people are like, as opposed to before, it's like sort of like looked past. It's like when I started getting this, people recognize like, oh, Elliott's strong, he works hard, like something that was celebrated as well too. So I think there's probably that underlying psychological aspect of it too. And then that got me into university, which it took me a couple of years longer to get there, which I think was a great thing for me. It allowed me to become a bit more physically developed, essentially come in like the physical development of the third year, but in first year. And that just continued my trajectory. And it was something that like even earlier like I was bought into, and it was something I remember when I became a coach, like that was different. Because like in my first year, me and my roommate, or well, not roommate at the time, but like good friend and eventual roommate, Matt Carter, we're in first year, had some success. We're like, hey, we want to get ready for the CFL. So how do we reverse engineer it? It's like, okay, we're in first year. That means third year, we got to be ready for this East-West, which means like we need to start right now, because like next year we'll be almost there, and then third year we'll be doing it. So like first year we started putting in the extra work in terms of like extra sprint training in the off season, focusing on that aspect, extra work in the weight room, and then dialing in the nutrition second, third year, and like getting as strong and fit and fast as possible, which juxtaposes a lot of like, and you probably saw it as well too, is like guys get to their third year, fourth year, like, hey, like really need to focus on a combine program. It's like, dude, you just wasted 2 years of your time. Yeah. Like this needs to be started like in your first year. And this is just the cherry on top with your final preparation. You can't cram for the exam in year 3 or year 4. So, that was the big piece. And then it was also just self-interest. We didn't have a full-time strength coach at the time. So it was, for me, it was like, I had to gain the knowledge myself. We had a program, but like I wanted to learn more about the intricacies, and like started searching out books on like combine training, speed training, football training, in as early as as for year 1 or year 2, started looking into that stuff as well. And that got me into kinesiology, which put me down on this path. And then I started actually coaching in my second year. So, in in my first year, Dr. Fowles was did all our speed, agility, quickness sessions the Tuesday and the Thursday. And like he was getting to the point where he was getting a bit older and he'd take a step back. So I actually took over my second year. And I did the sessions for the big guys, teaching all of like our speed drills and sprint work and agility stuff, technique as well. So like as a second year player, starting to get that coaching mentality, getting the reps in. And then, after, eventually got to the CFL, everyone starts thinking about what's next for me. I thought it was an easy transition that I wanted to go back into strength conditioning and just because, it benefited me so much. I had so much interest in it, and I didn't know at the time, but there's definitely a gap in the industry at that point. Like I just think back, like it was an opportunity to buy low, and I still think people should still look at doing that. Like after I got cut the second time from Saskatchewan, I went back and had a bit of a choice to make at Acadia. It was like, hey, look, like you can do this. We're not going to pay you very, very much money. And you're going to work a lot and train all the teams. And on top of that, if you want to make your additional money back, you can train people privately. And then I think when I did talk to quite a few people, there are things like, why would you want to do all that work for very little? And I saw it from the opposite perspective. It was like, I get to like gain one, get a job completely out of my, what I should be. Like no one should be a head strength coach of a university program right out of school with no experience. Right.
Yeah.
But like,
absolutely.
Right. But I saw it as an opportunity of like, hey, I get to, learn at scale, learn as quickly as possible, stack those 10,000 hours as fast as possible, getting ahead. And it's like where other people weren't going to take that position. That was my opportunity. So I was going to gain, initial capital and equity from an experience perspective early on in my career that was going to give me the advantage later on in my career. And that's what I saw as the advantage, just like the first 5-10 years, just work as much as possible. If I could have gone back and do it, I probably would have tried to work more and learned more.
Didn't you work like 60-hour weeks?
Something crazy, but like, when I wasn't working, I was learning and writing programs. But like that gave like, I think, I even had this conversation with one of my former staff, James, because he was looking to take a job at U of T as an assistant strength coach, and they were going to pay like obviously at Acadia was like, you're going to be an intern, I might pay you a little bit in the summer, but for U of T it was like $20,000 at the time, which is like, okay, it's pretty much nothing. And like, you're going to be very limited because you are going to be an assistant role. Like you're going to do very few things and gain very little experience. Like, or you can come here and you're going to get to do more outside of your scope of like a traditional JD. You're going to get that experience, which is then going to give you a leg up when you are interviewing for that next role. And I think that's like, it's a difficult thing to balance in terms of like getting paid what you're worth and getting the experience. But I think early on, you need to get the experience to be able to get paid what you're worth. And then, I think for me, like it eventually became when you have the skills and expertise and knowledge that something like collegiate doesn't pay well. So all that means is that you've exceeded the value they're looking to do, and you can move on to something that pays you more, whether that's like private sector, military, like I'm in right now. It's like, but the collegiate setting, I think people in the industry have like people always complain about like the collegiate sector. It's like, that's just, it's a great place to gain that skill. And then when your experience exceeds what they're willing to pay, that's a good thing for you. That means you can go somewhere else. You can take that career equity and go somewhere else. But if you try and walk into like the private sector with no knowledge, no experience, no skills, like one, you're probably not going to make very much money. It's going to take you a long time to try and gain the skills to be able to make a decent living. Whereas like, if you have very few skills and knowledge and expertise, like collegiate is actually probably not a bad starting point. You're going to get guaranteed athletes, right, that have to come see you, right? You're going to get lots of coaching opportunity and experience. You're going to get mentorship. You're going to have security, right? Like, and then you can leverage that to eventually potentially leave and transition to the next phase of your career. So, that's, in the long roundabout way, like my transition from like it being a leverage point to an opportunity, which I did consciously think of like, hey, this is going to set me up for the next phase of my career. It's a tremendous opportunity, and like it wasn't about pay because I knew in the long run it would probably pay off, which I would argue it has. And I wouldn't be here in my current position if it wasn't for the social equity, or not social, but career equity and skills and opportunities that I had early on.
Definitely. And like I can obviously empathize with that because with the similar like on paper education, like kinesiology degree, had a personal training job that I did for a year and a half, and I was full clientele and everything, but just hated the global gym, personal training life, and like the sales pressure and just like all that kind of stuff. And it was kind of just like, well, I don't like this. And I essentially asked Cummins if I could just come coach, and did it for no money. And I was like, don't worry about money. Like, I just want to come coach and learn. And like, did that for 3 seasons. And the first season just got paid 0. And the other 2 seasons didn't get paid a whole lot. But I mean, you learn, again, career equity, the way I like the way you frame that, and, systems, and learning how to lead and work with people and work with egos and different things like that, was super valuable for me. And then on the same tokens, like something they can't take off like your resume, like it's going to be there forever, like for you and for me, sort of thing. And then that kind of transitioned into another job working at a, call it, strength and conditioning facility, where we mostly work with athletes, where again, like when I first started, didn't make much money or wasn't getting paid much, but I saw it as a great opportunity because there was, NHL jerseys on the wall and junior jerseys everywhere, and guys like chomping at the bit to play OHL, and a couple guys, who end up heading off to the NHL at some point. So yeah, I never think that's a bad thing when people kind of do things for free or for very cheap in the strength and conditioning industry. And I think more and more people don't want to do that anymore, or afraid to do that, when that was, I think, more common for like people ahead of us, or like, or kind of thing.
But certainly it's a value proposition. It's like, if you are not very good, if you have no skills to offer, it's like, why should I pay you a lot of like money? Like, it depends where you want to work. It's like, we can't all have our first job at like whatever, like a big private facility or a premier place. It's like, and I would argue like you're better off going, like, find a niche or an opportunity, like find a gap in the market somewhere else where you can like capitalize, and like, you don't need to be amazing, right? Like, it might not be in Toronto, it might be somewhere in a corner of the country, but you're going to get a lot of clientele early. You're going to make safe mistakes, and then you can build you can build up your resume, which, like you said, you can't take away.
So the thing too is, like, when you're working with teams or in like group settings with like large number of people at once, you're talking about like accumulating your 10,000 hours of coaching. But if it's like you're just like rapid fire going around coaching people, you're probably accumulating like more experience faster, whether it's like cueing or leadership or the way you communicate certain things, and that all goes along.
That's the other part of, like, you're also getting, like, when you're in a dynamic environment like those, you're also interacting with a lot of different people and stakeholders, which gives you like better psychological flexibility and skills. Like, it's something that I've seen and talked to about people that have applied for our organization that like have like maybe only worked in like a private setting, and it's like, cool, it's like you are like the boss of yourself, and it's like you have no one to convince because you can do whatever you want. It's like in our environment, like you have to deal with like 6 or 7 or 8 different people and personalities and a whole bunch of people that don't want to work with you. It's like, it's going to be hard to like work in a multidisciplinary like environment that's like has a lot of friction if like you've just done whatever you want on your own, right? And like in a pretty like in a pretty fixed environment, right? So it's like, on top of like the actual coaching skills, you're getting all these additional like soft skills. They're going to translate to something else that you don't even take credit for. It's like you're getting your 10,000 hours like compounded.
Yeah, and the soft skills is what really like takes you where you want to go eventually. And I'm at the point where I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum, where I, for the most part, I essentially work for myself, and it's just me and the client one-on-one, which is great for me with that freedom. But that at the same time, like, I wouldn't have wanted to just like continue down the path I was, like only working for like myself or one client sort of thing. I don't want to gloss over some of the stuff you mentioned, because I know that you like talked about training for East West and all the training for the combine and stuff like that. East West game, you had a very significant tricep and elbow injury.
Yeah.
Can you walk us through what happened and how bad the injury was, and then what that rehab process looked, and kind of like what you learned from that along the way?
Yeah, so I was already pretty fortunate position there. Like a lot of, for the game itself, like a lot of people were rotating in and out, whereas like I just played all the snaps pretty much. And I think first half I had 2 picks already. I can't remember if I might have had 3. Or I dropped one. Anyway, we had at least 2 or 3 picks in the first half. And then, third quarter, I think we were on kickoff, and I was just screaming down the field, and like there was a bit of pile in front of me. So I tried to like jump over and like missile, head first, take out someone. But like happened to miss, and then just like threw my arm out to try and like break the fall. And like, it was at that like eccentric moment of like hitting the ground that like I felt like this like almost like a blowtorch to the back of the elbow. And it was like kind of one and done. It was like, ooh, okay, that really hurt. And then like got up and went to the sideline and saw the AT, and then she's like, hey, just do a push up like against the bench. And like I tried, and it kind of collapsed right away. And then because it's secondary staff, like there was really no follow up. But the next day, like my forearm was bigger than my shoulder, pretty much, just with all like the pooling of like the edema and all that. And because I was so diligent icing it, that like it took down a lot of the swelling, so I was like, okay, maybe it's not too bad. And didn't have a knowledge of the ecosystem, like, and there wasn't all these clinics like we have now, like these sports performance facilities and like sports therapy clinics that are private. So like I ended up going to some random athletic therapist, and he thought it was like a UCL injury or something like that. Completely misdiagnosed it and gave me some it wasn't until like a month later I got properly hooked up by my because I was struggling. My uncle hooked me up with his orthopedic surgeon that he knew, and he like got me in, got an MRI like within a couple of days, and like, yeah, you're triceps 90% torn, and then it got me in right away for surgery. But it's still, there was like a 6-week gap where I just kind of walking around with like just strings for tendons on my arm, trying to figure out what to do. Eventually got rehab, missed like probably came back too soon, like missed the first half of the season because I only probably rehabbed for like 12 weeks. So 12 weeks I was back playing again, which probably doesn't sound like a great idea, but I was going into my final year, and so I didn't really get to the first time since my first year I wasn't an all-star or an all-Canadian, and then on top of like being 5 foot, not very tall, and not I was fast, but not next level fast. I was undrafted, but as I went through, I still prepared as much as I could, and like I do think I got pretty lucky. Like, and I went to a regional combine, and I think I clocked a 4.69, but I think it was, and probably, I don't know who he is, but I owe this timer probably my career, because like I was doing this weird thing, like it's like I wasn't getting coaching on it, like where I would, before I would even leave, I would lift up my down hand, which technically should have started the time. But I think I was running like 4.89, something like that. Then he kept on trying to tell me, and I think like on the last one, like he just waited just that extra time till I actually went, and I just got under that 4.7 barrier, which probably gave me a chance. But it was still one of those things, like people have gone through significant injuries, like you don't really feel like yourself to almost 2 years. So even a year past it, where I was in training camp with the Eskimos at the time, like I still not 100% confident in it. Since you're providing me the opportunity platform to talk a little bit about myself, like one of the unique things about my trajectory was that although I was undrafted, I was actually the first person in the draft class to start that year in the CFL. So, people like my roommate at the time, Matt, went like 5th overall, didn't even make it. He left BC, eventually signed with Hamilton, but even like the first overall pick, first round, all rounds through round 6 or 7, like I was the first one to start in a game. I started my 3rd game of the season, went from 4th on the depth chart up to 2nd, and then an injury to the starter gave me the opportunity to play the majority of the season in the starting role at safety. So and again, just fortunate, like the system I was playing in at the time, like the coach I was playing for, like my skill set matched his system really well. It gave me an opportunity. If I went somewhere else where maybe they played more man schemes and things like that, probably wouldn't have played, but the system really matched my skill set and gave me a chance to actually have a career.
Awesome. So I do get some people that kind of watch on YouTube and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to make sure that we show who you were as a CFL athlete. And I don't know if there's volume or you can hear it or what, but
I can't hear it. But
that clap is classic, and I remember hearing that over and over when I played with you. And I mean, the quality isn't great on your Acadia highlight tape, but
no,
you can watch like clip after clip of you doing that to people over the years. So yeah,
Yeah,
5 foot,
back when we
not
could do
very
that.
tall, but
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I think I shouldn't speak for you, but I'm definitely paying for it in my neck and probably head at some point. So
Yeah. No, I just had physio today and got some release done on my traps and some needling. Just because again, I jacked myself up doing something. Yeah, back when you could, that was back when you could hit like that. And it looked like I was kind of like mean mug him a little bit when I stand over. I was actually trying to see if that was Matt Carter, because like I was trying to figure out like who did I, which white receiver did I just smack, and it was like, it wasn't my friend, it was Dave Stala, who coincidentally went to our rival university. So I saw him later that night, and he was walking around like this. He couldn't move, so he ended up having to go to the hospital to get checked out. But he came back, but he couldn't move he had 0 degrees of rotation and 0 degrees of lateral flexion. But that night,
can't do that anymore.
Can't do
Good old
those
days.
No.
Yeah.
No. So fortunate to have played in the year that I played in.
Yeah. So I mean, had to rehab the tricep, which was obviously frustrating. And you mentioned kind of feels like 2 years where you didn't really feel like yourself, but still ended up kind of good enough to start for a few years at a very, very high level. And I kind of asked you this last time, but I want to ask you again, when you got to that level, like what were the differences you saw in the athletes that you were playing with and working with?
I think they're more fluid in terms of more rigid. So they're more fluid athletes. And then just being around like just really smart players was something, like even something in like, I remember my first year, like trying to do one-on-one routes, and like there's a point where like literally guys would not go against me because I was so bad. Like guys would they'd be like, I'm not going against him. He's terrible. Right. Like I'm not even, might as well go against air.
That sounds like me in university, so I get it.
But and then whereas I see, like, I remember Kelly Malvo, rest in peace. Like, I remember him turning on a corner route to the corner and becoming the receiver before the receiver did. Just like where he was in position, was able to like get to the corner route. And so just the intelligence there, like how they did it, like how they approached from a professional perspective, like with some of the linebackers that played in Sask, and then just more fluidity. Like everyone could produce lots of force, or like just more fluid in their actions in terms of how they did it all, and that really led into like my second year going into that, in terms of like I really focused on, like I came back and I worked with like Stu Clow, and like because he's someone that had like really dynamic routes, and I just like worked on like matching him to the point where I was just locking him down. Then I get back my second year, and like guys like Andre Talbot, who played 10 plus years, even guys like Fred Stamps, like I was like winning routes, and like then I was the guy that like I'm in their hip pocket, like I know they're going to the corner, and then like I just sink into their their outside pocket, and like now I have leverage on them instead of being out leverage on the corner, which is a super hard route to cover in man on man. But like I was at the point where I was actually starting inside leverage, but then being able to sit on their hip and then break to the outside leverage before they even get there, and then now you're in hip pocket. Or it's just learning to the point where even that play there that you showed, like starting to read like a quarterback, read progressions on routes, so that like that's how you jump things. It's like you just cancel out routes. Like, okay, well that guy's gone, like there's maybe 2 routes left. Okay, that guy ran it out. Okay, there's only one more route I can possibly take, and I know it's a dig, but I can jump it because there's nothing else that's going to beat me. And you just start like running to routes before the quarterback even throws it, because it's like you just knocked out all of their options. So I mean, like a lot of guys like just had natural force producing capabilities, and like speed became a thing, and like I worked a lot on that my second year. Worked on more skills and development, but it was like the ability to move, and then the intelligence. So like I talked about like the OODA loop, like observe, orient, decide, and act, like just from a processing speed perspective, like guys just knew the game to be able to go through it. And like I relied on that more, because even at the next level, like I still was even more challenged physically. Like I could like keep up and like play really well in practice. But that's because guys were running like 80% where I was running 95%. And then like, I remember seeing like film on like, for example, film on kickoff, like in practice, I'd be like neck and neck with people. But then on like, if I was playing kickoff in a game, it's like I was like 7 yards behind people because they actually started running their fastest during the game. And I just didn't have that top speed. So defensively in smaller quarters, I was able to just use some of my tactical knowledge to be able to play faster. So that'd be the biggest thing, is just like, technique, tactics, speed. But, I did get, one of the greatest compliments he was actually a world level, like jump rope competitor. I can't remember his name. Yeah. But he's like, he asked me like, hey, like, he's like, you run track? He's like, I'm like, no, but I'll take that as a compliment. Yep. But there was a point, like going to my second year, like in the league, like just the way I approached it physically, from like, I was, seeing physio 2-3 days a week, just to get like hips workout, lats worked out, like, how I tweaked some of my changing, like my training. I just felt the best and most dialed in I had in my entire life. And I just felt extremely fluid. And then of course, you saw in the video there, I had a cast on. That's because second game of the preseason, and I was rolling. So again, the same thing. I go up to get a ball, I come down on a flexed wrist and dislocate a couple of my wrist bones and tear a ligament, and then miss the first 9 games of the year and come back in a cast. And as you can imagine, like lost some of that fluidity. Was slightly more rigid after.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
So then, knowing what you know now,
Mm-hmm.
and spend a lot of time researching, learning, training other athletes, what would you have changed for your own, say, combine prep or like your training while you were, let's say, in the CFL?
Yeah. So one like strictly combine training prep is like, I think missing people, like there's a lot of like two a day emphasis, like with people training, like getting 2 sessions in per day. And I think people misinterpret that as like, I'm gonna get 2 really hard baggers in. It's like they go balls to the wall for 2 sessions, like a really friggin' hard, like lifting session followed by really hard sprinting. Like really, it's like really the approach is like, you're trying to get 2 quality sessions in. So it's like, you don't need to put a ton of heavy, you do need to hit some high intensities in both areas, but like you need to keep the volume minimal because the quality of the work you need to do, it needs to be the paramount, because you also need to be recovering from that. Or you might as well just have one really long session and give yourself 20 hours to recover, right? So you kind of negate the effects of that would have been, because when I first started as a combine trainer, just like, I was like Jake and Kyle, just like, I just gave them a shit ton of volume, and it worked, because like they were just, well, it was Jake, and Jake specifically, and Kyle's like, they could just handle volume, right?
They're both freaks. Yeah.
Yeah, both freaks. Like, yeah, cool, this works. And then for less gifted people, it did not work so much. But I probably would have reinvented that a little bit. From an overall like physical preparation perspective, that I didn't really figure it out till probably the end of my career at Acadia. Is like, there's a difference between physical training and physical preparedness. So I think early in my career, I did a really good job of like getting people physically trained so their peak outputs were really good, but they may not have been physically prepared. So what I mean by that is like their 10-meter sprint or 20-meter sprint been really good, but like they might have only covered like maybe 60 to 100 meters of acceleration work in a session. Whereas you go to training camp, you're going to be doing like 60 times 10, so 600 meters of acceleration based work and over 2,000 meters of high speed running, right? And like that's where just strength itself doesn't translate to robustness, because like doesn't matter how high you can jump or how fast you are, if like you've only done whatever 100 units of work and what you go into requires 2,000 units of work repeated 7 days, like your body is not going to your body's not going to be ready for that. So there was a probably 2018, 2019 era where it's like, not only do we need to be physically like have good outputs, but we need to be physically prepared for the demands of what we're going to have to do. Like, and so it's like, instead of just doing, being aerobically fit by doing like 10 to 12 tempo runs, it's like, we were doing 20 to 30 because like we wanted to get in those 2,000 to 3,000 meters of high speed running on like the joints to be ready to go. And like we did arguably see, like, especially on the guys, we had like 30 to 40 guys stick around in the summer. Like those guys were all ready to go. Cramps were down, like very few injuries. So that's one side. And then like on just like the global development, like I really fell in love with like constraints-led approaches and dynamic systems theory through my master's is like, and speaking less and like being more creative with my drill sets to be able to bring out bring out the desired outcomes I was looking for. And that really translated into like, agility should be reactive, but reactive agility training and like perception action drills. So I came up with a whole series of like different ways to attack that. Because really like that's where my limitation was, where I probably gotten better. If I had more like true perception action drills, like I would have been better in small quarters. And that, again, that 2018, 2019 era is like when you're manipulating constraints, like you're creating variability, which then creates novelty, which also drives competitiveness, which then the athletes are, more engaged, putting better outputs in, and they're also gaining things that are going to transfer more likely to their more likely to their game or sport. So I stole a lot from like Elon Performance at the time. Like they had a really good way of like systemizing like mirror drills, box drills, like score drills, like, and so changing those into ways and how you can just stack them and create different levels on it, where you're reading through people while shuffling, while trying to score or stop someone from scoring, which has its own like combination of acceleration, change of direction, top end speed work. And then again, stealing from soccer about how you can manipulate the size of the boxes, where if you want to get, more top end speed versus more stop and starts. So, I think from, I would have, if I went back to sport, it'd be especially on development perspective, and have my kids to play around with and like figure out like that with them. It's like, how do you just make it more natural? Like the more implicit the learning experiences, the more automatic the integration of like the thing's going to be. Whereas like the more you talk, the more someone has to think, and then the slower that recall is going to be, and then the more like conscious. Like you want things to be unconscious in terms of things. And like there's actually in my master's I did a project called Shut Up and Coach, and like it was about like showing like how you can coach the power clean with like without saying less, just by like giving them different targets to focus on, from like putting a box or like adding some speed or like measuring their speed or their outputs or whatever. So like instead of actually coaching through the lift, it's like, okay, do the clean, but like here are the constraints now. Do it within these constraints. You see techniques automatically improve that you couldn't cue your way out of before. So and that just leads better implied learning and all that. So it would have been more on that, and even like kind of messed around with it, like volunteer like t-ball coaching. Like it came up with a whole curriculum for them, like all based around like
of course you did.
All based around like essentially like games, like getting lots of reps, because the traditional model they were using was like they like kids might get 2 swings out of like a bat, because they put like traditionally, hey, we're gonna sit in the bench, we're gonna, it's like, no, we're gonna have this group over here, they're gonna do that, we're gonna like throw our constraint is we're gonna try and throw these bean bags over the fence, and that's gonna promote our arm angles that we teach you how to throw a ball. Like we're gonna play catch without a glove because you're young and you can't even squeeze it. So it's like so just making things where repetition is key, get as many reps as you can, manipulating constraints, make learning implicit and automatic, and then you're gonna get that retention and learning a lot quicker as well. So those would all be things that like probably evolved and would have changed myself, and I would have been been even better as an athlete.
Yeah, for sure. Because everything when we were around was like run 40s, do pro agility drills, run cone drills, and like nothing that it sort of technically will transfer maybe to the football field.
Yeah.
But like probably not. Those like the reaction drills you're talking about makes perfect sense. And anytime you can make it more like a game for people, that just like makes it more competitive. There's more buy-in, there's more enjoyment when like, and if to your point, if you can keep the like rest periods or work to rest periods like efficient, so that people aren't getting bored or feel like they're standing around just like waiting on reps and things like that, that's going to go a long way.
And it's also more fun to coach, because it's like, hey guys, we're gonna do this, and it's like, for me, it's like, instead of being like, hey, we're gonna do 3 sets of 6 on like this speed drill. It's like, hey guys, okay, first rep we can do this. And it's like, okay, cool. Like they're starting to get it. And then I could use my own like coaching. I'm like, oh shoot, they're starting to learn the drill. I need to manipulate the constraints. Okay, guys, like now what we're going to do is like, I'm going to put a second layer in. It's like, you need to read the second person, you need to read the second person over there. And then the next time you go through, it's like, hey, we're going to do this. You're still going to try and read and react off people. When I give a clap, this group's going to chase the other group and we're going to finish like that. Right. So it's like it became much more fun coaching, because instead of having like this rigid, step-by-step thing, it's like I can get in there. It's like, okay, cool. I see they're learning. Now I'm going to adjust the variables. And then they like it because like almost it goes back to like one of the first things I learned from like motor learning perspective is like repetition without repetition. It's like, we got 6 reps in, but no rep was the same, right? Like they had to learn to be switched on for every single one.
Yeah, that makes sense too.
Yeah.
Speaking of constraints, when you started at Acadia, in terms of facilities compared to number of athletes, I would say that you were constrained. How did you go about managing the logistics of working with, I don't know how many, hundreds of athletes, and monitoring them, and also scheduling, because we are still not, and we're not one of those schools that has, 10 to 20 squat racks in a row with like personalized everything. And we definitely weren't back then. How did you manage all that coming in, not knowing anything? And to your point earlier, having zero experience.
Yeah. So it was just starting to read books and listen to coaches. And, fortunately I was like to stumble into coaches that had systems-based approaches. Like, so started really reading like, Mike Boyle had a ton of stuff at the beginning, and like his big thing was less on there's sets and rep stuff, but it's more about like how you set up your facility for efficiency. It's like, how do you have designated areas where things can happen? You can create flexibility in the types of exercises you do there, which then you start to then just naturally create a system. It's like Joe Ken was really big in the collegiate setting, and then I had like Exos on like the speed stuff. So it was like taking different systems and putting them together. But at the start, it was like having enough, essentially doing multiplications in math, like how much space do I have here? How many people can I fit in? Okay, I can do that. Then I need to roll in, and just doing the math. Like, this group can be here for 20, 30 minutes. And then so I'm going to schedule, groups every half hour. And then I can focus my time and effort on the coaching intensive list, which are all going to be in this area. So I can spend less time just floating over for the exercise that people probably, if they do it wrong, not a big deal. It was just like looking at the space and like making and having essentially sections or pods, I guess, if we want to get into COVID here. It's like essentially it's like, every series or happen in a certain area of the weight room. And then also just doing the dirty work of like literally I'd grab every single student athlete's class schedule, and I would just start going through and I would sort it. And I'd find like, okay, where could they fit in, start to develop trends on like when they would fit. How can I get this? Because I wanted to keep a team approach to training in. So I didn't want to have them mixed. And I also didn't want to give the coaches, like put it on the coaches. Cause like what they would do is like, they would just pick a random time where half their athletes couldn't train. And then I wouldn't get it. So I knew if I did it, like I could control all the variables. And, I would eventually, after a couple of years, I figured out the trends. It's like, okay, like, women's soccer, mostly in the sciences, they have labs that figure this. So like really the only time we can get them in is like Monday. So it's like, there's always some exceptions there, but it would be just literally I'd sit up in the post or the box, the press box of the hockey rink, and I would just spread out and I would just start organizing the times. I'd fill out Excel sheets, and then which became attendance sheets, and then send that out to everyone for them to show up. And football, like it would just naturally emerge. Like football is easy because they would get scheduled last because they tend to not have like heavy course loads, and there's so many of them, they would just essentially fill all the gaps, right? So I would actually start with the teams that had fewer people, more constraints, so I could put them into the slots that were easier to occupy, and then I would fill it with football. And then in the off season, like rugby might be in the morning because rugby didn't have a lot of team time together, so I wanted to make sure that they trained entirely together as a team. And then I gave priority depending on if you're in season. I gave you better priority in terms of like times in association with your practice versus off season was like, hey, this is your thing, so we'll you can kind of be whenever we need you to be. So it was a combination of like all that hard work there, and then coming up with essentially a structure or system for like, hey, we're gonna do these types of exercise in these areas. And then it also, from a program perspective, created flexibility for my coaches down the road of like, we could put on a whiteboard and be like, hey, look, like in your A series, depending on your type of split, you're going to have a horizontal press, and then you're probably going to have to horizontal pull together on these. Core's got to be there. It's like, I don't care what you do, but like it has to be in this area. And again, constraints. It can be in this area. You can pick whatever exercise you want to go in there. It just has to fit. And then we came up with different templates for collision sports, contact sports, and stopwatch sports. We're 3 categories. And then based on splits like there, and then the coach gave the coaches flexibility to pick the exercise they thought would fit in. But then allows us to make sure like we could sometimes have 3 groups going at the same time. They would just be in different parts of our weight room, as well as like potentially one warming up as well too. So sometimes you might remember this when we were in the squash course, I'd be like in the hallway working with the movement prep. Then I'd go down to the one side of the squash court with groups doing their A series. And then I'd rip across the other side, coach a couple people doing their B's and C's, and then takes attendance from the next group coming in.
I remember it just being stressful walking down that hallway, and there's a bunch of 6 feet female basketball players like just crowding up the whole room, and then you get in the weight room and there's a different team there, and I just want to take up the squat rack for an hour and piss you off. Taking up all the space.
My 45-minute squat session.
Yeah. So had to learn to schedule that differently, and then I remember Shad and Coach Cummins giving me a hard time because it's like afternoon, I got to go train. It's like, no, you don't understand. I'm going to piss Elliott off if I don't go train right now because I can't train later because there's 30 athletes or 60 athletes or whatever. He's got to get in there.
Yeah. It was like, we had like apps that would like for like our mobility and prep stuff that would like beep every 25 seconds, give them a 5-second to transition to the next exercise. And that would repeat for 10 minutes. And then empowering some of the leaders of like, hey, look, get through some of the dynamic warm up or whatever. And then get into there. So it was pretty much on the clock, and the constraints were good. Challenged me, which is good. Like I appreciate that. I appreciate constraints. Like I work in an environment where we have less, and sometimes it actually creates more problems because like your solution, well, I'll just, buy a new piece of equipment, or it's like, I'll just do this exercise. And it's like, you don't really have a system because like the system is like, do whatever you feel you need to do.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. Like, and we've all gone through these parts of our training careers is like, sometimes the best and funnest workouts you have are when you have like, well, I'll have a squat rack and like a pull-up bar. So I got to just figure out workouts, and then you just like make them based on that. And it ends up being more fun and productive than if you have, this elaborate gym with every single piece of equipment. Kind of just creates this like paralysis because of all the options and things like that.
Yep. There's just one of the books I just read called Inside the Box. Who wrote it, but essentially talking about that, and I've heard the concept before. It's like, the brain, the brain enjoys like constraints because all there is challenges. Like now I have to figure this out, right? And it also narrows you in on like the possible solutions, which again is the inverse of that paralysis by analysis. Instead of like having this broad aperture of like I have all the options available to me, it's like no, it's like you have a squat rack, you have a band, and you have a pull-up bar. It's like it looks like you're gonna be doing squats paired with a pull-up and some sort of standing core or accessory band exercise, and that's what you're gonna do, right? It's like cool, you got it done.
Yeah, I just looked it up. David Epstein. I've read the Sports Gene, so that makes sense. Yeah. He's good. So then along those lines, you kind of talked about like managing the workouts and schedules and everything like that. When it came to you actually monitoring like progression and the athlete performance and making sure what you're doing in the weight room is actually taking people where you want them to go, how did you monitor, again, hundreds of athletes?
Yeah, I mean, there's the basic like weight room based testing, which is pretty good. But like in terms of like day-to-day monitoring, again, I go back to 2018, 2019, where I sort of like started to figure like I felt I created a pretty comprehensive system using velocity-based training. Like that's one of my favorite tools. Like I would go back to that in an instant in terms of, and I have like a 45, 50-minute presentation that I did over COVID for GymAware in terms of how I leveraged it. Because again, I just wanted to create that flexibility that work for a team-based environment, but also something that's going to deliver results. And with that, was able to give people ranges, and I was able to adapt them because I had guys that didn't want to do a lot of work. So I was able to get, ranges of sets depending on how much play time a guy had. And then I gave them, a range of reps as well too. And then I gave them speeds to try and hit. So then it no longer became a battle like, hey, player A, you need to hit this weight. It's like, I want you to hit the best weight possible at this speed. And then it also enabled, because like you have this weird dichotomy in season of like, you have some of the guys that don't want to lift heavy, and then you have the guys that want to go too hard. So I was able to satisfy both and be like, you know what, like just give me the effort, whatever the weight is, the weight is. And it's like, hey, Taylor, you want to lift really heavy? Cool, man. Like lift as heavy as you want. Just don't go slower than this. Right. Yeah. And then for the guys that want to get more volume, it's like, you can work on the upper end of those sets. And it's like, you can do more reps if you'd like as well too. Because like I also need to be conscious of time constraints. Like I need to get an in-season workout done in like 40 minutes. But I also need to be stimulated enough for the guys that are playing, but then adaptive enough for the guys that are looking to gain or aren't going through the same volume of work. So in that presentation, I highlighted like even on we trained a lot on day one, which was more of a strength focused day. It was like our squat was more strength speeds were like that 0.75 to 1.0, and then our bench we're doing on the same day was still accelerated strength, so it was like 0.5 to 0.75. So we never really hit that sub 0.5 seconds were our maximum effort, but it was still good enough to go for the efforts. Then on the second day was Olympic lifting, and they were trying to hit some peak velocity numbers. And then I was able to give variations of guys who couldn't do hang pulls, they could do trap bar jumps or whatever it is, hitting those same peak velocity numbers. And then the nice thing about that in season from a monitoring perspective is like we had 2 bye weeks, and those are the weeks that we, using Gym Aware again. Promotion, but not a promotion. Actually, just got bought by Valve. We had them do the Gym Aware protocol where through like a linear regression, able to predict their 1 rep maxes, and we you were able to see like their projected maxes stayed in line with like their preseason max over the course of the season. But then we also were doing like jumps beforehand from like a monitoring perspective, and like that was also one of as from a monitoring feedback perspective is like guys at their jumps did get that automatic feedback because it was tied to their profile, and like it was just the instructions like, hey guys, like if you hit high, like expect you can probably do a bit more weight today than you used to. If you're low, expect you might not be able to. And that sort of power curve like undulated but like had a slightly positive trend over the year. And one of the interesting facts that was like we went undefeated that year, but because we're also monitoring like wellness and recovery is like the weeks where we were like lower on our power outputs and lower on our wellness recovery, our games were closer. And then weeks that our power outputs were higher and our wellness scores were better, we like won by 2 or 3 touchdowns. So we had this kind of like as a essentially kind of like a controlled experiment, because we played the same teams twice, and it's like one game was close, and it was a mix of home and aways where our performance was better. But on like weeks where our outputs were better in the weight room, we won by more, which would just indicate freshness. And then weeks where wellness scores were down and outputs were a little bit lower, games were a bit closer that year, which was an interesting like anomaly. So that's where from I prefer that to like, even though I did my master's thesis on like just pre and post off season 1 rep maxes, like I prefer the approach of like I prefer the approach of like training as testing as training, and just being able to like and get more feedback as well from like a monitoring perspective, so you can just see the trends, because like one data point in time over 12 weeks like it's something I struggled with, because like generally at the end of the semester players are tired, they're worn down, they're not sleeping, like, and they're like, oh, I didn't test any better than preseason. It's like, or I tested better than preseason in January. It's like, yeah, you're super fresh, like you're just way fresher, right? So it's just from an expectation management perspective, having that continuous feedback is something I prefer, and like what I work towards over time, especially for sports where like the training age was higher, like whereas like other sports were they're just the low-hanging fruit for strength, like it's just you could just see strength improvements, but even then it was like, if I'm trying to not trick, but like trick women's soccer into lifting heavier, like because again they have like their own self-imposed psychological perceived psychological limit of what they can do is like, okay, cool. Like, and they also like from a cohesive perspective, like to lift the same way. It's like, okay, last set you do as many reps as you can. As the point is like, we were asking for 8, they're doing 20. And then like, hey, you did 20 last week, you can probably go up 10 pounds. But like a lot of them put on 100 pounds on their, like say trap bar deadlift and added like, we're still doing like, 14, 15 reps by the end of their off season. Right. Like, which is a good confidence booster, but then for them, it's like their psychological threshold is below their physiological stimulus. So it's just a way to be able to stimulate that physiology, as well as like show them psychologically that they can actually do it. So it's a mix depending on what the culture is. That's where it's understanding, like knowing people and like understanding the cultures, like what do they need?
Makes too much sense with the VBT helping push the guys that don't want to lift heavy and just be like, hey, no, I need these speeds or these outputs. And then for the guy like me that's just going to try and go as heavy as possible, which was a thing I did to my detriment for sure at different times in university. It's like, okay, no, just like hit the speed, because it still becomes like, okay, like I'm going to lift the most I can at that speed, which is like falling into your game, but it's still like I'm trying to beat the video game score kind of thing. I'm still going to keep that number going up. I remember.
And at the end of the day too, like it's like from a, when you think about like the physiological principles, like strength training, it's like intent is one of the biggest drivers. And if like, even if like you're fatigued and like you're still pushing as hard, you're gonna get that motor unit recruitment. That's gonna like, that's all we're looking for. Is just trying to recruit those upper level of motor unit thresholds to like recruit those fast twitch fibers, so that when you do recover and like you're a bit fresher, you're gonna have those outputs, right? And like that's where you get those guys that are tired. It's like, hey man, like don't worry about it. Like we just need intent and recruit those those upper motor units. And that's what we're gonna get.
Yeah, I remember because you'd go into camp or going into camp, you would lift a little bit less, and then during camp, I don't know if it was first year or second year, like we didn't lift, or you like lift once or something over those like 2 or 3 weeks, and then you kind of start getting into the in-season workouts or whatever. So I remember I probably hadn't like squatted in a month, and then whatever the number, like I go into the gym and because I remember the practice, and because I complained about it to you because I squatted 405 for 10 after like not squatting for a month, right? And like did training camp and whatever. My legs obviously like Wednesday or whatever, my legs are toast. I can't do anything, and like just useless, right? Like that is not what you want to be doing with like the in-season athlete. But I'm this like first or second year trying to win a spot. And I remember like whining about it. And you were just like, "That's it." And I'm like, "Oh fuck, this guy's just like give me a hard time." I know, but also just I can't run right now. So there's always going to be like meatheads like that. So that makes sense. The VBT. I actually pulled up your YouTube GymAware video. I'm gonna watch that at some point. Not that I use tons of VBT in coaching, but there are some people that are using. It's becoming more and more popular in powerlifting and kind of just like tracking velocities against RPEs and kind of just seeing where you truly are and then making training decisions based on that. How did training and work for you change when you became a dad?
Became earlier. Like again, I never used to like through university, even like when I worked at Acadia, like I didn't like working out in the mornings because I just felt like I just don't. There's that psychological like, oh, I can do this, but in the morning like I'm 10% less, right?
Yeah, I still hate it.
Yeah. Whereas now it's like I might actually perform better in the morning because now it's the opposite. Is like if I try and go later, like I'm burdened by psychological load that limits my outputs. So yeah, it's just a non-negotiable. It's got to be first thing. Like I saw a good thing. It's like, let's say like, so I'll generally train, like if I do train in the morning, so probably if it's at home or the gym nearby, it's like 5:30. If it's at work, like I get in a bit early, like 6-ish, 6:30. So just first thing, but I guess still on the philosophy of like, that time before everyone gets up is my time. The rest of the day, it's like, I'm there to support them. So it's like one of those, put your gas mask on first type of deal. So it's earlier one, it's shorter to the point where like 45, 50 minutes is good. Like once I get to an hour, like anxiety starts kicking in around an hour, but like, man, I got to go, I got to be done this. And then just, more basics, like warm-ups are longer, but I try and mix things in for efficiency. 5-through-1 is something that I come back to every single year, just because like you get just enough stimulus, like you're getting a couple warm-up sets, it's time efficient, like I can see the numbers increasing every cycle. But other than that, like, I might only be like two working sets, like in a primary series, like probably 2 warm-up sets, 2 working sets the most. And then like in like a secondary series, like I might only do 2 sets. And as long as I push it, like that's enough to keep like lean mass on, keep strength up. Like, strength, I'd say, is overall pretty good. Not where I'd like it, get a couple things cleaned up, but I keep things like 4 to 6 exercises per day. I've actually started putting like some of my accessory stuff early, like as an extension of my warm up, because I would get to the end of the warm, for example, on like an upper days, like I might put a combination of like rotator cuff, triceps, and biceps in early, because like one, I'm going to probably fuck it off at the end if I don't, but it also acts as like a mini warm up for my pressing. As a bit of, and depending on how much time, like I might do 1 or 2 sets, as a primer, or I might, if I feel I have enough time, do 1 set as a primer at the beginning and then like 1 set as a finisher at the end. It's getting those in, like calf, Achilles work on the lower body days, but keeping it pretty like compound focused with some unilateral mix of cables and everything. But the big thing is earlier, it's shorter, it's more efficient, and I just have to manage my amount of volume done at higher intensities.
Yeah, it's funny you say that about the stuff that you're gonna like skip at the end, and so it becomes your warm up, because I've been doing a warm up now for I guess 7 years. I started doing it after I had a inguinal hernia surgery in 2019. So my first workout back became the warm up that I do now, and it's all the bullshit that I don't want to do. So it's like your dead bugs, your 90-90, and then like a single leg deadlift, whether you ipsilateral, contralateral, a split squat, a row, push up, 2 protraction, like whatever else, some like just band stuff. So it's like just 1 set of that stuff takes me 10 to 15 minutes. I kind of just like roll through all of it. I'm sweating and out of breath at the end or end of it, sort of thing. And like, I know it's like, if I do this, every day or every session, I should say, that's going to be 3 or 4 sets of all the prehab BS that I'm going to skip at the end of the workout, or it's going to have, like, to your point, 0 intention, 0 effort. So I'll just do it first and make it the warm up. That was kind of the mindset there. And as I know that I wouldn't do that stuff at the end, because usually just gassed, or to your point, like running out of time, having anxiety because I'm spending too long in the gym and my wife's going to be giving me shit for spending too much time in the gym or whatever.
I'm trying to get back to work, man. I get like 45 minutes to get the sim before like stuff starts happening at work. I got to get to it. And like, so it's just being more efficient. I think the biggest thing, like people I tell it worked, because I use this anecdote, is like very first class of exercise training that we attend in university, we learn the FIT principle. Frequency, intensity, type, and time. And like everyone loves to argue about intensity, type, and time, whereas like the magic is just frequency. And like at the end of the day, like intensity, type, and time is probably secondary. If you're not like consistent, like 2, 3, 4, whatever it is per week, like doesn't really matter, right? So it's like just work on frequency. So like there's some days, some weeks where I only get 1 upper session, 1 lower session, and it's like there's enough stimulus there. I think for me, like I can handle enough of, like I can still hit like heavier loads, like within a rep or 2 of failure, or like quite near to failure, and like as long as only 1 set, like I'm probably pretty good. Right, but I'm pretty consistent with it.
Perform better on those. Like I know that for me, and it's like I just like being in the gym, so I want to go more often. But like especially the last 5 years, 3 or 4 years, anyway, like 3 days a week, my like performances and my training usually goes better, just whether it's the recovery you're needing that time, or just the fact that it's inherently favoring recovery over the training. Like you're just recovering more often than your training, sort of thing. So that's something too, though, and I've talked to a couple other coaches about this, about when they became dads and how training had to change for them. Where like powerlifters, we love like the long 2+ hour training sessions because we're going to squat and bench and do accessories, and they're going to take forever. But another guy I talked to kind of said something similar to you, where he moved all his training to his garage, and he would say he would just go into his garage and start a timer, and he'd like, I'm giving myself 60 minutes, so you got to figure out how to get it all, like get as much in. And then he, did that for a few months, and then he's like, okay, this is basically how I'm going to schedule my workouts. He just kind of figured it out that way, sort of thing. So that'll make sense.
Yeah. And the hard part's probably like I keep going back and forth. Like I also want to keep some of the aerobic workouts. So like start off the week with upper, because that's honestly upper is something that I prefer lower. So I sometimes get to the end of the weeks and like I'd miss any upper body training because I'm stronger lower body like most people. So I start off the week upper, but I'm like, okay, like I want to do I want to run tomorrow? But if I run, my lower body session is going to kind of like it's like, where do I do my lower body? My run's not going to be quite as good. Like, okay, maybe I'll just do some off feet stuff, or like I'll do more aerobic. But it's like, when am I going to get this run? And so it's like this constant like trying to like, what am I going to sacrifice or trade off to try and get some things? And sometimes honestly, like you talk about recovery, like sometimes during the week, if like don't really feel like getting a tough lift, I might do a bit of a 10-minute warm up, do a bunch of accessory stuff like in a circuit style to keep my heart rate at like 120. And then finish off a bit more conditioning. I just get extra sort of bonus accessory work in while keep my heart rate up for the rest of it. Like that's also promotes recovery. I don't feel like I just gave something up as well. And that's been just a trick as well, like trying to minimize the number of weeks where I'm only get maybe 2 sessions in, just trying to get something in.
Yeah, you probably would appreciate, I'm sure you're familiar with him, Alex Viada. He coined the term the hybrid athlete, like, I don't know, 10 plus 15 years ago kind of thing. And then, so he's like a 700+ pound deadlifter who also runs like ultra marathons and has respectable like triathlon times and stuff like that. I recently read his book, and it's all about balancing that, like where your aerobic work goes, where your tempo work goes, where your heavy training goes. If you're interested, look up his book. It's just called The Hybrid Athlete. It's on Amazon. It's fantastic, and he's got like sample programs in the back, and he just like simplifies everything. And he's great. And something you said earlier, you were talking about just getting lots of zone 2 and like more of the trying to just sneak that stuff in more throughout the week. He basically argues in that book like every athlete can take advantage of zone 2, and like the amount of the adaptations you get from zone 2 cardio are like endless, essentially. Like you just more and more and more to the point where
the cost is low.
Sorry?
The cost of doing business is super low.
Yeah. And like he to the point where he argues like a 5K specialist and an ultra marathon runner will essentially have like the same like volume of work within a training week, because most of it's zone 2, because the 5K runner gets all the adaptations, and the ultra, even though like their workloads for their races are completely different. And they're going to run at different speeds and all that. They basically have the same workloads and volumes over the training week, because there's like endless amount of the 5K runner still gets all those adaptations from all the zone 2 work, I thought that was fascinating. And to your point, I know I mentioned like wanting to get an assault bike or an echo bike, and like, trying to fit where am I going to fit in more training, because I'm already running out of time within the week to fit in more training. So
for me it was just like 5 minutes at the beginning, 10 minutes at the end, stack that 3 or 4 days a week. That's 30 to 60 minutes.
Right? Makes sense. Awesome, man. I don't want to take too much more of your time. Super appreciative you've been able to meet with me a couple times now. I wanted to ask you just kind of funny questions. What is your biggest pet peeve about working in the collegiate setting?
Biggest pet peeve working in the collegiate setting. Let me think. People that take up squat racks.
For sure. Because some smug coach. And then kind of same question. What's your biggest pet peeve about the strength and conditioning industry today?
I could talk about it. Talked a little bit about with that point on like, people maybe bashing on like collegiate because they're not paying you what you're worth. So no, they're paying you exactly what you're worth. Like that's their value. It's your choice to make that money. If you don't like what they're paying, find somewhere else. But like, when your earning potential exceeds what they're looking to pay, then go somewhere else. Because it is a good opportunity for that. Like I think there's and it's an interesting one right now is like, because like where I work right now, like, it's salaried, it's pension, has like all the things that people say they want in a career, especially in strength and conditioning. But then like you try and convince people, not convince, but like, hey, look, this is kind of what it looks like. It's not the same as collegiate. You're not on the floor coaching 3 groups a day where they're doing exactly what you want. Like, man, like, no, I'm not into that. Like, I want to be like on the floor doing my things. Like, man, you can't have it. You can't like you can't have it both ways, right? Like, there is a bit of a trade-off. It's like, there's a reason why, like, there's some, market surplus why, collegiate and professional can pay less relative to like the number of hours worked. It's like, because there's so many people that want to do it. There's excess of supply, or there's an excess of demand and very little supply. So they can just like, someone leaves, they can hire someone else. Or it's like, go somewhere where there's, less demand, and you can, again, keep that social equity, or that sort of that career equity going. But like, it's just this weird trade-off. Like they want more. You kind of want it all, but you can't have it all. It's all about trade-offs at different places you're working at. So if you want to uncap your earning potential, go into private, but there's trade-offs with that as well too, right? So I think that's the biggest thing, and it also exists, I think, across probably a lot of the different professions as well too. People just think it's probably just unique to strength conditioning.
I think that kind of goes all the way down where, so like you start personal training jobs, and so personal training jobs, oversaturated market, because there's just, everyone wants to be a personal trainer, but you think it's going to be like either 9 to 5, or you're just going to have your 30 to 40 hours of client training every single week, and you're going to be making money. And that is not the case. Most box gyms, like global gyms, are like, okay, here's your 2 weeks of training where we teach you how to sell. We don't teach you anything about actually training anyone, and we're not going to pay you until you get clients, basically. And it's still kind of like that, things have supposedly changed, but at the same time, the barriers to entry are not very high. Like the education side of things can help you, but it's not necessary. You need like a weekend course or weekend certification still, and you can, walk into any like global gym and start training people. But at the same time, people either don't want to put in the time, or don't want to, like, don't think they should have to, or don't want to like work for less, or that kind of trickles like all the way, I think. And then in the world that I'm in now, like online coaching, especially in powerlifting, like there's no barrier to entry. You don't even have to have certifications. Technically, you can just do a powerlifting meet and put it in your Instagram bio and start coaching people, which happens. And there's lots of, like, I know I've actually talked to people on this podcast that kind of started organically that way, where they just started coaching people after their first couple of meets or whatever, where there was friends, and kind of just grew. Not saying that's all bad, but at the same time, I think people want it to be, again, like this, like full-time 9 to 5, like have all these hours and all these clients, but it takes a long time to actually like either build it up, or build the brand, or build the trust. And like, I think there's, to your point, like a lot of jobs that are just a bunch of levels in the strength and conditioning industry where you can see things like that happen.
And it's like, look at like it's total compensation as well too. Like there's a time and place where like to take something less pay, because you're going to gain something more than pay out of it, whether it's like network, whether it's experience, whether it's mentorship, and like understanding that can leapfrog you to the next thing. It's like, it's not all about coming and like in your first 5 years making 80 to 100K per year, right? Like probably not going to happen, right? It's like if you invest the time early and you gain these skills, it's like you can, that'll eventually come. You just need to find your spot, and it may not happen in your most ideal location. Like for me, it was moving across the country to a town of 3,000 to a school that had no gym to get the experience that I wanted. My career would have been much slower and stuck. I'm like, well, I need to work at a big university and like start as like an assistant strength coach, getting no experience beyond just like the level of like maybe an intern, right? So it's like all about getting experience above what your actual current role is, because when you go for the next role, you need to actually have those experiences. So
Yeah.
and that's a unique sort of like paradox as well too. It's like people always like, well, I don't want to work outside my JD, and it's like, well, like if you want the next job, it's like those are going to require things that you don't currently have, so you need to find a way to get those.
Yeah, it's a great point.
Yeah.
Awesome, man. I appreciate you. That's kind of covers most of the questions. I think that's a great place to stop. Thanks again for meeting with me, and yeah, looking forward to seeing where you take everything. And super cool to see hear more about your trajectory and your career arc. I was there for spots of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like picking your brain, and looking forward to listening to this stuff back, man.
Yeah, me too. And I'm looking forward to diving into that hybrid athlete book. That's gonna be a good one.
Yeah, it's great. Alex Viada, Viada. It's fantastic.
Cool. I'll look it up right now.
Awesome.
All right.
Appreciate you,
Thanks,
man.
Kelly.
It's pretty late now, so I'll let you go.
All right, man. Talk to you soon, buddy. Take care.
Have a good one. Take care. Bye.
And now Kevin Glenn looks at 2nd and 6. Flags fly over the middle. Dave Stala is leveled by Elliott Richardson. One of the hits of the year, and Stala remains down.
Brace yourself. Oh boy, what a hit. Elliott Richardson